And we're back. And we're still here with Dick and Nardine, and we might be the only ones for a little bit tonight. Um, I know not everybody is able to accommodate the new time, and that's unfortunate. And I know that some folks are doing the webinar tonight as well, so hats off to them. And some folks have said that they will join with us after it goes to the archive. Okay, let me finally get completely settled here. I'm so sorry. All right, I'm sitting here laughing like it's funny. I hope you think it's funny. Lots going on. So first of all, I want to thank Ide for sending out a reminder to everybody that we are at a different time this week, because I did not think to send out a reminder. All right, let's go ahead and open with a word of prayer. Come, Holy Spirit, giver of life, breathe into us that we may hear a word of truth this day. Draw us into communion, enable us to love, conspire to make us one with you. For the world you love so deeply, love. Amen. Alrighty, so this coming week, I keep thinking that we're doing confirmation this week, and we're not. We're doing it June 6th. The reason I keep thinking we're doing confirmation this week is because the planning spreadsheet that we were using didn't include May 30. So on the planning spreadsheet, this week is June 6th, but of course it is not. It is Memorial Day weekend. So this week, we're still following the lectionary. We're going to use Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, and we're going to use Romans 8, verses 18 through 25. So Isaiah chapter 6 is the story of Isaiah's calling. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. And then Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 25, Paul writes, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed to us. For in the creation waits in eager expectation. I'm going to try this one more time. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hopes that creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. That will be the topic of the sermon this week. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. Now, lots of interesting things going on in the world that have to do with religion, or at least have religious implications. So our first 2 stories tonight are from religionnews.com, and the first one has to do with religion and scientists. Religion, science, and politics, and the way they influence each other in our minds and in our culture. Hello, Carolyn. Good to have you with us tonight. So in 1972, researchers... Oh, excuse me. Did not mean to hit the camera. In 1972, researchers for the General Survey, working with the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. University of Chicago has an excellent social sciences program. They began measuring how confident Americans feel toward people leading certain key cultural institutions. In other words, how confident are the American people in the leadership of this field and this field and this field, okay? And since then, they've occasionally asked Americans to rate how confident they felt in people leading the scientific community and how confident they felt in people who lead religious communities. Hey, Deb, welcome. Good to have you here, Deb. And so recently, researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and at Denison University went through 30 different waves of the General Social Survey, and they were looking at how attitudes have changed over time. And this is interesting. They found that in the 1970s, Republicans were more likely to trust in science than they were in religion, whereas Democrats were more likely to trust in religion than they were in science. And since then, those two things have completely flip-flopped. So now Republicans trust religion, but no longer trust science. And Democrats now trust science, but no longer trust religion. That's very interesting. They didn't talk about any more conclusions beyond that, but it just confirms what some of us have suspected for a while, that conservatives aren't paying as much attention to empirical data as they used to, and that progressives are not paying as much attention to religious values as they used to. Nothing shocking there, but it's good to see at least quantitatively studied. That's not good news for either side of the equation, by the way, either side of the spectrum. Another interesting thing in the news, the United Methodist Church has been hemorrhaging members ever since it came into existence in 1968. We talked about this in church this week. In 1968, the Methodist Church came into being through the merger of the Methodist Church with the Evangelical United Brethren Church. And at that moment, our membership was at its peak at around, I think it was around 18 million people at that time. We were the largest Protestant denomination in the country. But we were only at that peak basically that year of the merger. We've lost people every year since then, and it has been a combination of our existing members have grown older and have died. We have not brought in new members, and the children of our existing members have not continued on in the movement. And for a long time, there was the allegation, with some data behind it, that well, the data was definitely there. The data showed that progressive denominations and middle-of-the-road denominations, I don't consider us to be a progressive denomination, were declining, whereas more conservative denominations were not. That is no longer the case. All denominations are in decline now. The Southern Baptist Church became the largest denomination after we shrank past it, basically, but it has been in decline for some years now as well. Over the past 15 years, they have lost 2 million members, and according to the article in Religion News, there is certainly evidence to support the fact that all of their infighting has been a part of it. They've lost several high-profile leaders over the last couple of years. And a lot of it has been conflict over whether or not the Southern Baptist Church should be so tightly aligned with conservative politics, and also a lot of it has had to do with many Southern Baptists wanting to give women a real leadership role in the denomination, which they don't currently have because they cannot be pastors. So anyway, we're not the only ones who have problems. All right, so Speaking of science and religion, um, oh, this isn't directly dealing with science and religion, but there's religious implication. Certainly in my house, um, scientists at Rutgers University have studied kids who play video games, and they have determined that kids who, not just video games, but kids who have more than 1 hour of screen time per day have significantly lower grades than those who have less than 1 hour of screen time per day. Most of that screen time is video games and social media, and certainly that intersects with the spiritual discipline of moderation. Nothing wrong with social media or video games per se. A lot of that stuff goes on in my house, but is it the right amount of it compared to the other things in life? So, the last interesting scientific insight that has religious implication I want to talk about tonight was, oh, hello, Carmen. Good to have you here tonight. How important it is that we support people in their brain health, is what I like to call it. The common term is mental health, but when you talk about mental health, there are still some people who say, well, it's all in their minds. It's not a real thing. And I know that the stigma of mental health issues has dropped significantly in recent years, thank God, but it's still not where it needs to be. And there are still so many religious people out there who think that if they have a mental health problem, that they should be able to solve it just between them and God without a medical intervention. And you know, you would never treat your heart that way, or your liver that way, or your lungs that way. If you have problems with those organs, you don't say, well, God and I will just have to sort it out. There may be some elements of it you need to sort out with God, depending on whether you've got some bad habits that contributed to those problems, but certainly you want a medical intervention there. And your brain is the most important organ in your body. And when your brain is not working properly, you want a medical intervention. And the thing that was in the news about that this week is, there's a platform called Reddit. It's both a social media app on phones and an extremely large website. One of the last bastions of free speech left on the internet, where you can talk about almost anything without getting banned. And there is a subreddit called Suicide Watch, which is a forum for people that's meant to give a safe space for peer support and conversation for people when they need it. So basically, it's a place where people who are kind of on the edge go to get help when they need it. Not professional help, certainly, but just community support. And they found that there is who did this? This was King's College London. Took a look at when that forum is the most active. And I'm sure they spread this over different time zones because it wouldn't be meaningful unless you did. The wee hours of Monday morning, between 2 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning, are much more active with people going in looking for support. And of course, we're assuming it's because Monday is a new week, and whatever challenges their life faces, that's when they have to go back to them. We don't know that. The people themselves haven't been consulted on this. But that just goes to show, once again, how much burden people are carrying around. We joke about Mondays being hard days. I'm blessed in that Tuesday is my Monday. This is the first day of my work week. Monday is my day off. But most people, of course, Monday is the first day back. And so many people just live for the weekends. Their job is not a source of joy in their lives. It's not something that gives them a sense of meaning or purpose. It's just something that pays the bills. And of course, there are times in life when it needs to be that way. You can find your meaning and purpose in your home life, and you have to pay for your home life by working during the day. But we would hope that the work day would not be something that would push people to the edge like that. So those of you who still show up for work, who are not retired, who have a place of work, I'm not, and I know that retirees work hard in various organizations. They do it voluntarily, so theoretically they're in a place where they want to be, where people who go in to punch the clock on Monday morning are not necessarily in a place where they want to be. Just go into that place remembering that there are people around you who are suffering. And some of those people will act out and be gracious with those people. All right, so moving on to United Methodist news, and I'm treading on thin ice with this one. Um, Several bishops in our connection have had accusations made against them relating to how they are handling appointments this year in light of the anticipated upcoming separation in our church, the upcoming schism in our church. The most conservative of our denomination are separating and forming a new denomination, and in some conferences of our connection, pastors of those churches that are anticipating withdrawing are finding themselves being moved this year when they did not anticipate being reassigned this year, and in some cases, spectacular level of protests. I mean, in some conferences, you've got protests taking place outside of bishops' offices, which is something that hasn't taken place during my lifetime. And yeah, it's hard to know if there's truth in this or not. One of the bishops that has been listed in some of these articles, I strongly suspect is in fact doing that. In other words, what I think he's doing, and when I say he, it may be a she. I'm not revealing the gender of the bishop. Bishop looks at this particular congregation, thinks we're in danger of losing this congregation. The pastor at this congregation wants to take them out of the denomination, so I'm going to take that pastor out of this congregation and move them either to a congregation that I know is not going to leave, or a congregation that is definitely going to leave no matter what we do, put them there, and then put another pastor in this congregation in the hopes of talking them out of leaving if they're sort of on the border. And the question is whether or not that's an ethical thing to do. I personally think it is an ethical thing to do. We all serve at the pleasure of our bishops. That we know that from day one going into this. We take a vow of obedience to them when we go through ordination. So they are absolutely within their rights to do this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. I mean, if you've got a church that's sort of on the fence and doesn't know what it's want to do, that might make sense to do that. If you're trying to retain that congregation, if you've got a congregation though, and most of these congregations seem to be congregations that are, really dead set on leaving. Switching out the pastor in those situations, you're just asking for a lot of trouble. I just don't see what there is to be gained by that. Personally, I would be paying these congregations to leave early if it were up to me to get as much, to prevent bloodshed, more or less. Hopefully, there won't be any actual bloodshed, but we certainly, a lot of people get hurt during these things, so I don't know that it's a good idea. Our bishop hasn't done anything like that. In fact, if anything, she hasn't said anything like this, but my personal observation is that she seems to be going out of her way to make sure that congregations have like-minded pastors assigned to them so that there won't be any ugly situations where congregation goes one way and its pastor goes another, and then we have to figure out how to handle that. So, of course, I think very highly of our bishop. I've said that many times. I think she's I can't imagine any other bishop that I know doing as good a job as she is doing right now. Other Methodist news that's on a sadder note: Lake Charles, Louisiana, has been through 2 hurricanes in the past year, and they have had other flooding incidents outside of those, and they had a major storm system go through May 17. It wasn't a hurricane, I don't think, but I don't watch the news on TV anymore, so I'm not as up on hurricanes as I used to be. But at any rate, massive flooding in that area. A number of United Methodist congregations are involved, and we have been asked to put flood buckets back into production again. Now, you might not all know what flood buckets are, but they are a thing that the United Methodist Commission on Relief collects and dispatches to places that need them, places that are recovering from floods. It is a 5-gallon utility bucket like you would buy at a hardware store or at a big box home improvement store, and it has certain items in it like bleach and sponges and various other things that are needed to you know, sanitize a place that has been flooded to prevent mold growth and all that stuff. And before the pandemic, one of the ministries that some churches did was produce these in large numbers, and then the denomination would store them in various places to dispatch them as needed. Now, at one point, they sort of after Katrina, there was a huge effort to make a lot of these, and ended up being too big of an effort, and they had a hard time figuring out where to put them for a while. But we're back now in the situation where we need congregations to be actively putting together flood buckets. So if anybody is interested in doing that, either let me know or just go to the conference website. You know, if you want to just take this project and run with it, everything you would need to know there. That's usually something the Volunteers and Missions handles, but anybody can put it together. The other sort of Methodist natural disaster going right now is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You may have heard that there is a volcano erupting. It's a fairly active volcano. It erupts, I think, like once a decade or so. And so it's erupting now, and it's causing mass migrations, and at least 5,000 of the people seeking refuge right now are United Methodists, and their bishop is asking Rwanda to take people in. Apparently it is near the Rwandan border, and the Congo has a lot of physical accessibility issues. You can't just drive one place to another like you can here. So the places to flee are not necessarily going to be within the same country. So keep those folks in your prayers. Now, Sunday, and earlier in this live stream tonight, I talked about how the United Methodist Church was the result of the merger between the Methodist Church of the late 20th century, or the mid-20th century, I should say, and the Evangelical United Brethren Church, which was our German-speaking version of Methodism in the United States until it stopped speaking German and English became the norm, and so they merged together. So the mother church of Methodism in the United States is Lovely Lane Congregation. The mother church of the Evangelical United Brethren is Old Otterbein. And Otterbein was the name of one of the two German-speaking pastors who founded the predecessors to the EUB church. And that church is downtown. It is right next to Camden Yards. Beautiful little old colonial-style church. This year it is celebrating its 250th anniversary as a congregation. It is made with red bricks that were used as the ballast in cargo ships coming in and out of the inner harbor, which at that time was the harbor of Baltimore, the port of Baltimore. The ships would come in with bricks for ballast, and they'd take the bricks off and load them up with stuff leaving the United States to go elsewhere. So that's what that red brick that building is made out of is. If you've never been down there, it's a beautiful little congregation, little walled garden. Anyway, so congratulations to them on 250 years. And finally, if you go to the Baltimore Washington Conference website, you will see an article about First United Methodist Church of Hyattsville. And thanks to a loan from the conference, they have just installed an industrial kitchen that they will use in one of their many ministries there. One of their ministries is a food kitchen that they operate. They feed 100 people a week. They've been doing it for quite a while. I remember volunteering for it once back when I was in college. That was in the 90s. So, it's been there for quite a while. And it's a very active congregation doing a lot of very vital ministries. It is also the congregation where I was baptized as a United Methodist back around 1971-ish. Sometimes my mom says I was only a couple months old when I was baptized. Sometimes she says I was almost 2. I seem to have a memory of the occasion, so I'm leaning toward the age 2, because I don't think I would have remembered it otherwise. So congratulations to Hyattsville United Methodist, and thank you to the conference for helping them out with that. Now, on to local news here at Mount Zion. Um, I've been pitching a new idea for youth ministry to our youth and to the people involved in our youth ministry program, and it seems like people are willing to give it a shot. All around the country, youth leaders, in particular, youth Sunday school leaders, have come to the conclusion that Sunday school doesn't work very well for middle schoolers and high schoolers anymore. And many churches that have successful youth ministries now have abandoned the idea of having a class for youth on Sunday mornings. And what they're doing is that the youth that want to be part of Sunday school are being put to work as teachers' assistants in the classes for the little kids. Some youth really enjoy doing that. They get really engaged in that, much more so than they would if they were in a class. So what I am recommending to our youth, I talked to the confirmation class about it. I've talked to a couple other folks about it. Next year, so we have the 10 o'clock service, which has Sunday school for children during it. The youth right now are having Sunday school after that during the 11 o'clock hour. The 11 o'clock hour is sort of an activity hour where we have bell choir rehearsal, we've got childcare for the kids, and various other things sometimes take place during that hour. What we're looking at doing with that hour next year, possibly, going to be talking to the church board about this on Thursday night, is during the 11 o'clock hour, continue to have an activity hour where we can have rehearsals for various groups, any kind of short-term classes we want to have for adults or any other age group. Have a good fellowship time during that hour. A good, solid fellowship time with a lot of food, something that's intentionally designed to encourage people to mingle and to meet new people. In church growth circles, or yeah, I guess that's what you call it. This is called Midsized Spaces. I say that people behave differently in different size social settings. You behave one way in worship when you've got 100 or more people around you. You behave a different way when you're in a classroom or somebody's living room when you've got 6 to 10 people around you. And then you behave a different way still in those in-between spaces. Like they call them cocktail party size gatherings, where you've got a group that's smaller than a worship service, but big enough that you can't talk to everybody at the same time. So people sort of cluster in groups and meander around, go from group to group, check in with different people and say hi. The reason church fellowship hours don't generally function that way is because we have tables with chairs scattered around, so people sit down with their own little group and they don't move around. So the idea is during the 11 o'clock hour to have a fellowship time for the 10 o'clock folks that would be very different in the way it's set up, provide food for people that have been there all morning. And during that time, we could have youth fellowship, not youth Sunday school, but youth fellowship. So instead of having youth fellowship on a weeknight, we would have fun for them on Sunday morning to sort of reward them for coming to church with their parents. Okay, you've sat with your parents for an hour. Now we're not going to put you in Sunday school for another hour. We're going to let you play ping pong or have breakfast with Eddie and catch up with your friends who go to different schools and stuff like that. And do that on Sunday mornings, and then have a weeknight Bible study for the people who are really interested in it later in the week on a weeknight. I remember I was involved in a youth ministry when I was in high school that operated like that. They had a big fellowship thing every week, and then they had a smaller thing for the more devoted folks who wanted to come back, and that was a systematic Bible study. So that's something that I'm looking at to do in the future, and just wanted to pitch that to you folks tonight. Grist for the mill, so to speak. All right, prayer concerns. I said in church on Sunday that I was going to spend most of the day at Georgetown Hospital on Monday, and I did. Not for me, though. Some people were asking me if I was okay. I am. Holly had to get more tests done, so I took her in. And I was hoping that I would be able to see Al Richards while I was there, but that's not the way they had this set up. I really had to be near Holly the whole time. And then right now they're doing a lot of construction at Georgetown. So the way it works is when you're done, they punch your parking ticket, and when they do that, they bring your car up. It's time for you to go. So I wasn't able to see Al, but while I was waiting for Holly's test work to be done, I did give him a call, and he actually answered the phone. He did sound, under the weather, but certainly doing much better than he was doing last week. He said his temperature has come way down, still slightly elevated, nothing like it was last week. But please continue to keep him in your prayers. He needs to do, he needs to kick this infection so that he can get back into his chemotherapy. Also, I talked to Richard Skank today, Rich Skank, and Karen's procedure is tomorrow. Well, it's a series of procedures, really. So the first thing was the pre-op stuff today, and that was done, and she did well. Tomorrow she goes in for the bulk of it. So please keep her in your prayers. Does anybody have anything else that they would like for me to address this evening? I'll give you a couple minutes in the comments here if you have any questions or things you would like to share. Joan Ritchie right now is in the webinar that the conference is putting on how to re-enter well. Of course, we've already re-entered. Now we need to figure out if we did it right or how we could improve upon what we're doing. I'll tell you though, moving worship online and outdoors was a challenge. Moving it back indoors again has also been a challenge. It has not been a simple matter of flipping the on switch. I don't see any more comments coming in, so we're going to go ahead and call it for the night. And we will finish up with the Serenity Prayer as always. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. I saw one came in. Oh, Joyce. Yes, thank you, Joyce. And by the way, I'm hoping to have a guest next week. I put out the invitation to several Methodist pastors who have written books and or have ministries going on that could use support from more than one congregation. Lots of our churches host ministries that are not just single congregation ministries, like the Hungry Team. Several congregations support the Hungry Team. So I've asked some other pastors if they would be interested in coming on and talking about what they've been up to. I think that would be interesting. I know I'm interested. Carolyn Livingston says we have music on Thursday. Again this week? We just had it last week. We have it again this week? 2 weeks in a row? Really? Huh. Well, I'm going to be at a board meeting on Thursday night, so I won't be able to be there. I'll come in, catch the tail end of it if I can, all right? For those of you who don't know, we have a music jam twice a month on Thursday nights. It is a combination of bluegrass and old country music. It's a mixed group of folks who come and play. Sometimes it's a big group, sometimes it's a small group, and they all know all the songs well enough that they can come in and go out and have a jam session. And it's a wonderful experience for those of us who love bluegrass and old-time country music. So, in the past, there were refreshments. We're not doing refreshments right now, for COVID sanitation reasons. But when it resumes in the fall, I'm not sure how long into summer they're going to go this year. Usually they can break in the summer. They might go a little longer in the spring this year because of catching up for lost time, so to speak. But if you've never been to the Edsel Bradbury Music Jam, you need to come on out on Thursday night to the Fellowship Hall and experience good old time music. And folks, this is the type of thing that's not going to go on forever. Bluegrass music jams and church halls, they're dying out. Okay, it's an absolute miracle that we still got one going on here. So if you've never experienced one, you don't know what you're missing. Come on out. And now we're up to 8 people, just in time for us to shut down for the evening. I know it was a new time. So, you can watch the whole thing in the video archive either on YouTube or on Facebook. See you guys next week. God bless.